as we move along tonight. We are socially distanced here in the room, so I appreciate the way it's set up. Thank you, Jim. Thanks to the crew. Thank you to the crew for doing that. So welcome to the Raymore City Council work session for Monday, July the 20th. We have several items on our agenda tonight to discuss. The first being our report from Constable Sanitation. So I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, sir, and I will turn it over to Mr. Constable to make this presentation.
All right, I think I'll go with the half mask here too. I sound a little fuzzy and very deep breathing through this thing, so you don't want to hear Darth Vader here tonight. But thanks for having me, and I really wanted to come tonight. I don't know if you're aware or not, but last week was our 1 year for servicing Raymore, and really in that 1 year, we feel very good about our services. And although it is just 1 year as a milestone, really we want to accomplish the 5-year goal of providing consistent good service here for Raymore. The city staff and the residents of Raymore have really given us a good opportunity to provide that. And really last time we spoke, we talked about adding a different truck, which we have worked in. And as we speak today, we're going to talk about adding another new truck through Raymore to kind of keep up with the COVID transition and kind of some of the trash, how it has flowed from restaurants with the to-go and takeout orders back into residential with people not eating out as much. So we recognize that stream. And with also the 1 year, I think it really speaks loudly that most of our team is intact from the team we started with. You only have one driver that's different that works out here. You have the same route manager that began with us last year, and you have the same office manager with Taylor in our office, and she's really knows both city staff and has gotten to know several residents out here. So it's positive to keep that consistent and keep it very systematic. As far as since last time, the COVID pandemic has affected our trash stream, and we were really, January through March, felt really good about what direction the Raymore trash was going. Then with COVID began in April, I'm not gonna lie to you, when April's month came in, it really scared me as far as the amount of trash, and I kept telling myself it had nowhere to go but down. I think we ran about 870 tons out of Raymore that particular month, where you guys normally average about 600. Then May followed with 740 tons. Then last month was down to 705. So as long as there's no stay-at-home order in effect, and as people become more accustomed to getting back out of the house and in the regular routine of things, it'll trend down to that 600 mark, which was for us very good to see. And one other impact of COVID, I would say, is the recycling market, which the steel market with the lack of production has went down. Same with aluminum. Factories close and they use less, so on the recycling side there's less demand. But we're very grateful that the paper market took off with all the toilet paper purchases and paper towels and other cleaning supply. It really saved the residential recycling sector for the time being to have such a demand for that product. So if you are purchasing and recycling, I would lean towards attempting to recycle as much paper product as you can currently, because they're getting the most use out of it, as it does manufacture some of the paper towels and cleaning products, disposable masks, things of that nature. Since last time we spoke, we also did the survey, and we had some ideas for that in regards to recycling, and all that was most of my ideas were getting out actually in front of people on the street with recycling product, either for farmer's market or just something in person. But with the COVID, we're going to have to do some Zoom videos and hang them out online and see what we can come up with to be creative as possible, so people know what to recycle and what not to put in their can. And any negative reviews that we've got, which is really our focus now, with my route supervisor, you know, we really push, okay, we've heard a lot of positives, but let's focus on whatever's negative is coming in. That way we're not complacent and always trying to continually improve. So any negative reviews that we've got, we've reached out to those individuals, and it seems like anything has been circumstantial. Like they were missed one particular week, and we go back through the routing and talk to them and see what happened and do everything that we can to make sure that problem's fixed. Outside of that 1 year and just a lot of trash this last couple months, do the council staff have any questions?
Yeah, I'll open it up for questions now. I know I'm pretty happy. The number of complaints I've received as mayor have plummeted, so I know you guys are doing things right. I had one the other day. You took care of it yourself. I appreciate that. And no, from my perspective, you guys are doing great. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Constable, I wanted to tell you two things. One, in regards to your service, I had made this statement before. We know that trash service is going good when we don't hear anything about it. And I thought it was probably one of the few constants that we had during the COVID crisis, during the height of the COVID crisis when it first opened. Trash service ran seamlessly. I didn't notice any difference, and I got no complaints from anyone. I think the year's been fantastic. I think you and your company have done a great job. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was, in addition to great service that you're providing to the city, you, perhaps as opposed to some other businesses, have not just come in and done business with us, you have embraced the community. Your company and you were very active in our gala at Centerview for the fundraising for the park equipment, and we greatly appreciate that. We think that's the sign of an exceptional service provider, so thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I concur with everything that's been said, and George and Shannon, it doesn't seem like a year, so that tells me you guys are doing a great job, because it seemed like it was just the other day. And when things are rough and bad, kind of like this year seems like it's lasted 5 years, and we're not even through the year. So that tells me you guys are doing a good job. And I want to apologize too, because I was probably 1,000 or 2,000 pounds on that month, because we went through our whole house and got rid of a bunch of stuff. I think I even called you and said, hey, I got to apologize, but there's a lot of stuff out there. But I trust me, there's no more. So we're back to normal. So thanks for doing a good job.
Anyone else? Anything else, George?
No, just a follow-up. We'll
Okay.
keep improving, and then I'll come back and let you know how that other truck has changed capacities and kind of help with the city growth. I know there's some new developments and process here, so we'll make sure that we're ready for those.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Fearborn, did you have something else?
Just for the council's information, of course, at the 1 year mark now, we do go into negotiations with Mr. Constable relative to next year's pricing. He is well aware of all of those deadlines, and we're on top of that with him.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the FY 2021 water and sewer rates. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you. I will ask Ms. Williams to make the report on this item, and then I'll have a little bit of follow-up with the council.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay with this one?
Yeah, might move it a little bit closer to you.
Okay,
Oh,
here we
there,
are.
you're good now.
The city follows a cost of service model to determine our water and sewer rates. Annually, we go through this process and analysis using a water and sewer rate model. We've used the same model for quite a few years. In this analysis, it's important that we maintain our fund balance to be adequate to cover all of our costs, and that includes our 20% reserve of our expenses in the enterprise fund. In the finance department, we do a lot of analytics, and we track the number of customers that we bill for water and sewer, as well as the consumption that's billed for each of those categories. So I'll start with our water rate analysis. In analyzing our rates, we assume consumption per customer of 60,000 gallons annually. That's what the average is this year. This takes into account the past 5 years of billed consumption. The number of customers anticipated for fiscal year 21 is 8,299. We anticipate paying Kansas City for consumption of 497,940,000 gallons of water. We will not see a rate increase from the City of Kansas City for wholesale water this year. Due to COVID-19, the Kansas City Council back in April took action to hold the wholesale rates at the 2020 rate. Due to our estimated increase in customers and no increase in our rates from Kansas City, we are able to maintain our water rate at $6.38 per 1,000 gallons. Moving into our sewer rate analysis. For sewer, the average consumption for the past 5 years is 53,993 gallons annually per account, or per estimated customer. Our estimate for fiscal year 21 for sewer customers is 8,062. So this data goes into our model and helps us determine what our rates should be. The Little Blue Valley Sewer District, who processes most of our sewer, provided an anticipated rate increase to us just this past week. Their year starts October 1st, so they're in their process too. Due to our increased flow and using their current rate methodology, they're projecting an increase to the City of Raymore to us of 12%. That increase equates to about $170,000 per year. In addition, we have anticipated 1,881 customers in the Middle Big Creek District. Rates have been, for the Middle Big Creek, we pay per connection to Middle Big Creek. Since 2014, we've paid $32.50 per connection. That is scheduled. There's been a scheduled rate increase for a while, but it goes into effect fiscal year 21 to $37 per connection. So that rate is increasing 14%. So we expect to pay an additional $120,000 to Middle Big Creek. With these increases, in order to cover the cost of service for our sewer customers, the rate model calculation is $8.89 per 1,000 gallons for the volume billing method. The winter averaging calculated rate is $9.34 per 1,000 gallons. Our current sewer rate is $8.35 per 1,000 gallons, so this increase is 54 cents per 1,000 gallons. So I took that and calculated that based on a 5,000 gallon of consumption, and it would equate to about to $2.70 per month on 5,000 gallons.
The other sheets that are in front of you on these items are the enterprise fund summary, and there's 2 sheets associated with this. As Ms. Williams has indicated, and we've discussed with the council many times, the only charges that we put into this are truly what our cost of service is, and allowing for a very, very modest and safe fund balance over and above restricted fund balance. What you can see from these 2 sheets is the first sheet is if we capture the 54 cents and increase the rate by that, we end up with a available fund balance in the fund projected of $136,084. That amount has me a little bit nervous. The amount, if we don't capture the 54 cents, has me much more nervous because it actually puts us into the negative, which we cannot do. That concludes the staff report on this item, sir. What we did hand out to you is what we do each year. The sheet that you have in front of you that looks like this shows that with the 54 cents captured increase in price, we are still of water and sewer at 5,000 gallons lower than any other location in the metropolitan area from our survey cities. As far as what we are charging for water and sewer combined, at 10,000 gallons, we're still lower than all of them with the exception of Lee Summit jumps because they have even more increments in their pricing structure. They jump to being just slightly below us.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Isn't it true too, Lee Summit, they're in Jackson County, so they buy their water cheaper than us?
That's correct. So they are what is called a second-tier pump.
Anyone else have anything? Any questions?
Of course, this particular item we always bring to you in advance of the public hearing. We always have a public hearing for both water and sewer, even though statute only requires us to have it for the sewer. We have already posted for that 30-day public hearing, and it will be conducted on August 24th. So this will be in front of you formally at that date.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Holman?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Feuerborn, can you expand a little bit more? You mentioned briefly the reserve balance that was going to be left over, and it's down by quite a bit from the year before, and you talked about concerns. What are your long-term projection with that? What are our risks involved with the fund balance being that low? And what got us there, and where will we be what's your estimate on where we'll be in the future?
I would like to get this to where we're maintaining $200,000 to $250,000 in the available fund balance over and above the restricted fund balance. The restricted fund balance is there for emergencies, and it's obviously a healthy amount compared to the 250, but for this to truly be cost of service, I do not feel like I feel it would be disingenuous to be building up an available fund balance in this fund and still call it a cost of service.
And so, to add on to that, will that balance, does it grow, say like a savings account, depending upon, or does that range from year to year? Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
It definitely ranges from year to year because obviously the most significant factor here is while we have set amounts from Little Blue and Middle Big Creek, we don't know how much usage is going to go into effect. So more water usage, that changes our fund balance.
Okay.
Necessarily.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
And just an FYI, with regard to the sewer rates, I sit on the board for both the Middle Big Creek and the Little Blue Valley Sewer District. One of the things that we've been discussing lately, and it has been passed so far by the Mayor's Advisory Board to go to the Board of Trustees, is a rate recalculation for Middle Big Creek. So we'll move away from the per connection fee and we'll go to a metering fee similar to what we do with the Little Blue Valley Sewer District. And that way we can adjust it. One of the reasons we had to do that is that the power plant out here in Pleasant Hill was wanting to connect. Well, the connection fee would be $37.50 for about 150 to 200 gallons a day, or 200,000 gallons a day. So they decided that a metering rate would be a more advantageous, so that smaller homes and communities like Molendyke and Dykeland wouldn't be necessarily punished for the additional use that was going to be put on Middle Big Creek when the power plant came into. They had been pooling it, drying it, and hauling off the sludge from that. But they'll do something similar to that, but the water will still be wastewater that has to go to Little Blue Valley Sewer District for treatment. So that rate change from, was it $37.50 is what it was going to be next year, will now be a metered rate based off I think there's what, like 4 or 5 large meters for that particular community that they'll then kind of push back out.
I think there's 9 meters,
You're right, there are 9
and
meters.
the
The other option was
and
the 4.
all 21 member cities have to sign off on it.
Right, so you'll see that come before us before too long, too. If the Board of Trustees on August 20, I forget the date of the next meeting of the Board of Trustees, but it's sometime in August, and once that Board of Trustees approves that rate change, then it'll come to all 21 of the entities that use Little Blue Valley Sewer District to sign off on this rate change. So that'll be upcoming, but I know that Lisa had mentioned how Middle Big Creek assesses their fee, but it's in the process of changing. Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll move on to the next item, which is item C, the budget amendment. Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. Wanted to alert the council. I'm going to give away part of the thunder. I have asked the mayor for an executive session tonight to discuss personnel because of this item being on the agenda. Of course, we put out for early retirement incentive, and one of the people who took advantage of the early retirement incentive was the administrative assistant in our HR department. She took advantage of it really quick and left last Wednesday. So we are left without an administrative assistant in there. I was actually going to be asking for the administrative assistant position to be eliminated and replaced with a benefits specialist position. As I'm sure you all are aware, benefits in this day and age have become incredibly complex and this person handles loggers, handles all of our insurances, is the first person who is actually meeting with any new employee who comes in here after they're hired on. They do the onboarding. The benefits specialist is the person who talks about how those areas hit our code and our administrative policy manual. It is becoming an increasingly complex position. Again, I was going to propose the change in the budget. Our administrative assistant leaving early necessitates that we post a position for in there, so I would like to be able to bring this to you formally as a budget amendment next week, and then 2 weeks later do the final read so that we can get somebody on board and get them trained up in any of the specialization that they need with our particular benefits package before we actually go into open enrollment, because easily the most important person during open enrollment is this particular individual. So again, no change in FTE, just simply replacing the administrative assistant's position with a benefits specialist. The grade would go from grade 7 to grade 10, which is $17 a day. And I think that is well worth it. But if the council had any questions before next week, I just wanted to get it to you a week in advance so you'd have the chance to take a look at it.
That's not the rate of pay, $17 a day. It's the
$17
difference
a
between the
day.
two.
Thank you, sir.
Are you done?
That includes staff report.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Mr. Delgado.
Just a quick question, if you wouldn't mind doing the math for us. How much is that annually, the difference?
Oops, sorry. $4,335. That's the increase over a step 1 administrative assistant, but that's actually a whole lot less than what we were paying the individual who is leaving.
Anybody else? Oh, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that, with that grade change, that makes us competitive in the marketplace for qualified candidates?
Interestingly enough, when I was looking at, grade 10 is actually, so we would have a benefit specialist at grade 10, and our payroll specialist is at grade 10. So when I was looking up on the SHRM website, what the average pay midpoint is for an administrative, or for a benefit specialist, it was per hour at our midpoint 2 cents less than the midpoint of where our grade 10 is, where we had proposed to put this. So just right on, spot on. So I think we could be pretty competitive and get some pretty qualified individuals in here for this.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, sir. Our next item is the Van Trust tenant update. Mr.
Thank you,
Fearborn.
sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Gress to make a report on this item, and would caution the council that might have any details about this, that tonight we will be calling this Project Bulldog, which was the original code term for this with ED, because we're just a little bit worried that it's in its final stages and we don't want to rock any boats.
Thank you, sir. As you mentioned, we've spent a lot of time over the last several months working with the folks at KCADC with this prospective tenant. Had a lot of very, very positive meetings. So I'm excited to be here this evening to update you all with where we're at and give you some insight on some potential next steps that will hopefully take place over the next couple of months. At this point, I think Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Icky, the mayor, have probably briefed you all up with who the tenant is at this point, but to refresh your memory, we're looking at the potential for a 1.75 million square foot distribution and fulfillment center that would serve as the main hub for a national, and in some cases international retailer that is looking to consolidate their facilities on the east and west coast and centralize them here in the Kansas City area. To begin with, when we started this back in probably January, there were several sites that were in play, both on the Missouri side and Kansas side. Over the last several months, that had been narrowed down to 3 sites on the Kansas side and 3 sites on the Missouri side of things. At the very last minute, we know of at least one site and developer that threw in an additional site on the Kansas side at the very last minute to try and enter the race, and they were actually successful. Fortunately, as we've met with this group over the last several months and had a lot of good conversations, as of last week, we were notified that on the Missouri side, at least, the other 2 sites that were in Kansas City were eliminated. So Raymore is now the only site on the Missouri side that is a potential site for this facility, which is very exciting. And it's our understanding that there are 1 to 2 sites on the Kansas side that are still in play. So we've worked really diligently with the State Department of Economic Development to coordinate some of their programs that the state is able to offer. And I confirmed that as of last Thursday, Governor Parson did have a personal phone conversation with this group, just reaffirming everything that they had offered in the very beginning. Obviously, through the COVID-19 pandemic, some of their programs have kind of been up in limbo, but the state is definitely still on board and committed to making this project happen in Missouri, which is good news for us at this point. That aside, working with Van Trust, obviously they're a huge partner in this and have been for this site overall. They've been an extremely great partner to work with in trying to chase this tenant. I think they want them probably just as much as we do to see their park built out considerably within a short amount of time. If you haven't driven by the site at North Gas Parkway, you've probably seen that they've got some equipment out there. I believe today or yesterday they put in the culvert for the stream crossing, so they've been doing a lot of work out there. One of the things that has happened because of this project in order to make the site a little more attractive, originally, if you think back to when Van Trust was proposing their development, they were going to be constructing Dean Avenue in 3 to 4 to 5 phases as they continuously built out that park. In an effort to make the site that much more attractive, they've actually stepped up and committed to building the entirety of the roadway from North Cass Parkway down to the lift station, which is huge for a couple of reasons. In doing that, they obviously save on some of the mobilization costs that they would have had to pay 3 to 5 times, depending on the number of buildings that were in that park. With that savings that they realized in doing it all at once, they were actually able to pass some of those on to this potential tenant to bring the price of the land down a little bit more increase the attractiveness of it. So we're very appreciative of working with Van Trust and what they've been able to do to keep the attention of this tenant. And I wasn't directly involved in the original Chapter 100, but I can say without a doubt that the work that you all had done to approve the existing package was undoubtedly successful in drawing attention to Raymore as a place for business. I see a lot of emails come through KCADC, and increasingly Raymore is getting more and more attention for through types of projects throughout the Kansas City area, so it's very exciting. That being said, with the way this project is shaping up and the land transaction that's scheduled to take place, no matter which site they go to, the tenant will be likely purchasing the land either from a site in Kansas or hopefully directly from Van Trust. And because of that, it is our opinion that it makes most sense to, for the portion of this site that this tenant will be purchasing, to more or less dissolve the existing Chapter 100 for that portion of the site and propose an entirely new Chapter 100 package specifically for this project, meaning that the 50 or so acres that would be left that Van Trust will retain, the existing Chapter 100 would still remain in place. We would simply be talking about this 80 or so acres that this tenant is interested in. So we continue to have talks with them. We met with them here about 2 weeks ago just to rehash things where things were at, since it had been quite some time. They were scheduled and on track to make their final announcement by August 15th as to which site they were going to land in. It's not clear whether or not the fact that we're the only ones on the Missouri side of that will speed things up or not, but we're hopeful that they'll hold true to that August 15th deadline. In addition to the Chapter 100, we've also been looking at ways, obviously with a building of this size, some of the soft costs that you incur, the permitting, plan review, some of the utility fees, depending on the tenant, can be quite large, not necessarily proportionate to the service that's being provided, that just because, again, the overall sheer size of the building. So we've been looking internally at different ways that we can bring some of those costs down to be a little more competitive in the process. That being said, the overall package that we'd be looking at with respect to the property tax abatement is still very close within our ED policy, which, if you're not familiar with or haven't read it recently, favorable consideration is given at the council level to projects that limit their public participation to 15% or less. And so we've been trying to keep that in mind as we put together a very competitive package for this tenant. And again, we hope that over the next couple of weeks, within the next month or so, that we'll have some very good news that we can bring back to you all here later this year. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions. I'm sure Mr. Fearborn, the mayor, or even Mr. Eakey, they've been very involved in the project, and they can probably answer any questions just as good as I can.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, sir. The acreage you talked about with this prospective tenant, I'm assuming that's on the north end of the land, the frontage along North Cass Parkway, is that correct?
That is correct.
And then the second question, I've heard some numbers, and I realize this is speculative.
Actually, it doesn't directly affront onto North Cass Parkway. There is a commercial strip before you actually get to this particular property, which, should we get this particular project, that commercial strip is going to become very valuable.
Understood. And then, like I said, I know this is speculative, but do we have projected job numbers should this developer go in? Or
Sure.
this
We do.
retailer?
Yes, they shared that as part of their original inquiry when they first started this process. Overall, we're looking at anywhere between 1,300 and 1,500 jobs. The interesting thing about this tenant that they've worked really hard to work with the state to get these numbers correct is that they have a really unique balance of full-time, part-time, and temporary workers. So those numbers will likely go up during peak season, and then the off-season probably go back down. So you'll probably see an ebb and flow here of new jobs within the community throughout the year.
And my understanding is these would not be, for the most part, minimum wage jobs. Is that a correct assumption as well?
That is correct.
Thank you.
One of the other attractive things about this company is that they have a history of working with the school districts and ensuring that they have a plethora of work-related kind of internships that they provide, that they work very closely with the school districts. They will be very appreciative of the school district's partnership with them, and they are very active in the community that they're in right now, and they're really a community partner that I think puts them in an outstanding position to be very well welcomed here when and if they do come here. I like to say when. We were, Mr. Townsend and Mr. Gress, Mr. Eakey and I, we met with them last week before last, and had just a couple of drinks with them downtown to kind of reintroduce ourselves, because we'd met them when we went out to meet with them on a business trip. Mr. Townsend was in the group this time, and we had an opportunity to meet with them. I thought it went very well. They were very appreciative of our involvement with the process from the beginning, and just an exciting partnership that I think for both of our school districts, both Belton and Ray Peck, will benefit from, because that is one of their kind of their flagship programs, I guess, is working with the school districts to ensure that they have an opportunity for young people to come into the organization, work part-time with them, do internships, not just at the fulfillment level, but at management levels as well. So it really is an exciting opportunity for us to work with a company that will come in and be a community partner. Did you have anything else, Mr. Townsend?
I did, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the comments. Not only is this a COVID protection device, it's also a muzzle, because it's a lot of things that at that meeting and this particular, should this particular business come to the community. Unique brand, it fits with Raymore. There are growth opportunities beyond this particular parcel of land and this particular distribution center. There's more to it, that they have opportunities should they decide to make this their second home and make this their home, I believe, as the COO had stated. So I'm excited as well. I appreciate staffs and the collective council as well for the efforts they've put forth with the Chapter 100 to continue having that fiscal mind about them and being responsible for the tax abatements and still being within the realm of our ED policy. And still have opportunities in out years. Once they're up and operational, we still have the luxury and the ability to continue to do things we do within this community to maintain the services and the protections that everyone's accustomed to, even when we do court businesses such as this. So I appreciate Mr. Gress and his predecessor and everyone to put our city in a position, even in this environment of stay-at-home orders and the economic downturns with as a result of the pandemic. We still have the ability to be competitive in the market, and we still have the ability to be competitive in future years behind this. So, because once this is installed and operational, and we have that workforce that's fully employed, it gives us another opportunity to do bigger and greater things. So I look forward to hearing the great news, and this is being, we have the ribbon cutting, and we can move forward, and that'll be a pretty good feather in your cap, being your rookie year, I would say. So that'd be good to go. So thank you.
Mr. Holman?
A bit of a philosophical question for Mr. Gress as our Economic Development Director. So I have been a proponent of this philosophy for some time, that success begets success. Would you agree that should this business come in and locate here, that this would be, say, the catalyst or the first domino to fall, and there would be great success to follow in general?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
I think it,
Mr. Gress, why don't you talk to them about Project Yellow?
yes. So to back up a little bit, should Van Trust and the city be successful in winning this project, Van Trust has indicated that there would still be room left over for them to do roughly a 630,000 square foot building at the very southern end of their project. Coincidentally, today, another project lead through KCADC, Project Yellow, came through, which is another food manufacturing and distribution center. Didn't have a whole lot of information on the project quite yet, but they toured around the Kansas City area last week and visited upwards of 20 sites. They've since narrowed it down to 8, both on the Missouri and Kansas side, and again, the Raymore site is on that list as well. And I think either one of these projects, specifically the one we're in pursuit of right now, I think is, at least in my opinion, above and beyond, I think, what any of us anticipated when we were going through all of the work with Van Trust. So we're extremely excited to have the opportunity, but absolutely, I think with this tenant specifically, you would see a lot more interest down at the interchange.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I just this is probably more in the weeds, but when these type of complexes come on board, and we went out and saw a few, and there's some going in our next door neighbors, I was under the assumption that most people leased them. They were do a long-term lease and do that. This doesn't sound like that situation, and I was just curious, is this normal for this company to do that? Do they own their facilities now? And to me, and I don't want to get in a renter, ownership type of deal, but to me, it's more permanent always, especially in commercial real estate when somebody owns their own property.
Yeah, it certainly differs by the type of sector that you have in each building, the type of tenant. I mean, it's all on a case-by-case basis. I would say it's about 50-50. With this company specifically, I do believe that they own all of their other facilities similar to this one that they own, both on the east and west coast. What's interesting, and I'll kind of back up a little bit, I mentioned in my initial report, we were looking at some of the soft costs, the permitting fees, review fees, and things like that. The reason that we started thinking about that, it was very well received, is that one of the things they voiced when we were on the coast earlier this year is that they are looking for a community that they can grow, and this is only the first project of at least one or two more that they mentioned to us while we were visiting with them. And so it was our impression that not to mention that some of these other projects would be larger in terms of consumption of utilities. And much higher wages as well. And so we thought this would be a good token of how much we want to build a relationship with this group and see them through to the end of these other projects that they're interested in doing in Raymore, that we're here for the long haul should they choose to be here. But no, it is definitely unique in this case that they're looking to purchase the land versus lease it. From both our perspective and Ventrust, it's created a little bit of need to get creative with some of their tools as well.
Yes, Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I want to join with everyone else in congratulating you, sir, on a great job, and hopefully this comes to fruition down the road for you and Mr. Fairborn, Mr. Reekie, you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, and everyone else involved with this. Because it's exciting, I would be very curious to know what kind of a timeline we would be looking at. When do you anticipate them making a decision? Yeah. And once they make a decision, how soon would they be looking to build?
As Mr. Gress had indicated, I would think that the latest date we would hear is August 15th. That would be a very public announcement. More than likely, the successful and unsuccessful candidates will be hearing, I would think, by the end of the month. So by the end of next week. Timeline, when this was first presented to us, they wanted to be breaking ground in September and to be able to use actually use this particular facility in full by the holiday season of 2021. So very aggressive. Another item that actually kind of passed me by, but when we've been talking with our Special Economic Development Council, Sid Douglas, because it is a distribution center twofold, some of the distribution actually goes directly to homes. So any homes that they would be selling to in the Raymore city limits, that would actually be considered sales tax. So this would be even though we've all been talking about Chapter 100 and property taxes and everything else, they're actually a sales tax generator for us and the county and the state of Missouri.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Okay. Thank you, David. Next item is council compensation. As you know, the charter changes under section 3.3 states that on at least an annual basis, the compensation of council members shall be placed upon an agenda and discussed by the council at a work session to determine the need for any alterations. Given the fact that the latest changes that we'd made were finally instituted just last month, I would say there's probably no appetite at this time to talk about this, so unless somebody has something to say about this, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, we've talked about it, and we've complied. Item F is board and commission appointments. I have for you copies, if you'll just pass those on down around there for me, Jay. We have 2 reappointments to the Arts Commission and 3 reappointments to the Park Board and a replacement appointment to the Tree Board. And I'll let you all kind of take a look at all those to see if you have any questions. Give me a shout. But these will be on the council agenda for the next regularly scheduled council meeting unless something crazy happens. But wanted to provide you with those appointments to those boards and commissions. As you know, I work closely with the department heads of Mr. Fearborn to make sure that, you know, we've got the right composition and folks are interested and want to serve and continue to serve. So there you have it. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Just kind of a funny question. Person on the tree board, is their name spelled correctly? Because if there was an E added, they would be perfect.
I actually made that comment, sir.
All right.
Yes, Mr. Dugwood.
Just real quick, I'm curious. We usually get copies or emails with notifications if there's a new person who applies for our ward. But I'm just curious what our volunteers, our applications are looking like in the other boards. Do we have piles of people waiting to get on boards, or do we just have a couple people on those waiting lists, or are we actually sometimes on the spot looking for someone to fill a position?
Yeah, in some wards, we are kind of on the spot looking for choices. There aren't that many really that we have within the file that have expressed an interest to serve on them. Several of them have marked several boards or commissions that they're interested in. In the case of the person for appointment to the tree board, he'd also expressed a desire to be on the park board. So, I mean, there aren't that many. If you get an opportunity, or if you'd like, Ms. Warner will send you the link to the entire spreadsheet of applicants that's remaining, if you want to take a look at that.
Thanks. And I was just curious because I know, at least I've shared with you my opinion, if we can reappoint someone who's already got a little bit of history and who's doing a great job on a board, there's no reason to kick off someone who's a successful member of our board. So I think reappointing people is good for our system, like I said, as long as they're productive and participating. But I was curious if as a council, we need to be out in the community more talking about this opportunity for people to volunteer and kind of doing some recruiting, or are we sitting in a good place? That was why I asked the question.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I actually would appreciate some recruitment efforts on you guys' part. If you come across a citizen that seems to be one involved with different levels within our city government here, please ask them to put in an application. I mean, we can take a look at their background, take a look at what their interests are, try to match them up to that board, and yeah. So recruitment is always, I mean, it's just like the police department. We were always out there recruiting too. So yeah, if you can come across somebody that's interested, thank you.
Just a reminder for people.
Sure.
And a good one, and it will become even more important next year in April, because we will be necessarily, because of the results of the census, redrawing boundaries. And for those of you who were here last time, that there were some drop-offs and some people who now we can serve until the end of the term, but at some point, I remember when we redrew those boundaries, there was kind of a dirge in some areas where we were out trying to recruit people. So better now than at the last minute, for sure, to have a good list to go off of.
Exactly.
Mr. Mayor, one more quick thing. Just
Sure.
in case, all of our wide audience out there is watching, could we remind people, how do they apply?
Sure, Mr. Fearborn, you want to?
Actually, on the city website, there is, you can actually go into the volunteer section, and there is a form right there, a very simple form to fill out. In fact, it's the one that's attached here, just a one-page form that we ask folks to fill out, or they can come into the window and Jeannie can print one out for them and they can fill it out right here.
Thank you.
Sure. There's nothing else. We'll move on to board, see, we already did that. So we have other is moving into, you don't need to go to executive session now? We do need to go to executive session. Okay. So unless somebody else has something they'd like to bring up at this time, I would entertain a motion to move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Townsend.
I move that we enter an executive session to discuss personnel matters as authorized by Revised Missouri Statute 610.021, subsection 3.
I'll second the motion, sir.
Thank you. Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Any further discussion? Could I have a roll call?
Councilman Abdul-Wahab?
Yes.
Councilman Burke?
Yes.
Councilman Barber?
Yes.
Councilman Berenson?
Yes.
Councilman Circo?
Yes.
Councilman Holman?
Yes.
Councilman Townsend?
Yes.
Councilman Jacobson?
Yes.
Thank you. When we clear the room we'll move into executive session.